When they arrived, they found the 11-year-old Arabella lying on the living room floor. She was pale, unresponsive, and had no pulse. At the time of her death, Arabella visibly was already severely emaciated.
This 11-year-old girl died weighing just 48 pounds, and after years of alleged torture and starvation at the hands of her adoptive family. Now, her adoptive mother and grandparents face criminal charges and accusations of 700 acts of abuse. It is time to go into a deep dive into the details of this case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. In August of 2022, this little girl, 11-year-old Arabella McCormack, died in a San Diego hospital after her adoptive parents called 911 claiming she had choked while eating. Paramedics arrived and they find her lifeless body on the floor, described as a, quote, corpse with skin stretched over it. How horrifying is that? She weighed just 48 pounds. And what followed was an investigation that revealed years of alleged torture, starvation, abuse, all at the very hands, supposedly, of her adoptive family. It is a case where we are left asking ourselves, as we often do so many times, how did the system allegedly fail to protect her? And why did these people who swore to protect her allegedly fail? So Arabella's adoptive mother, along with her grandparents, they are all facing charges that accuse them of essentially torturing and starving her to death. Leticia McCormack, along with Leticia's parents, Stanley and Adella Tom, are now facing criminal charges. They are connected to hundreds of alleged acts of abuse. And prosecutors say this resulted in Arabella's death from severe malnutrition back in August of 2022. The criminal complaint, reviewed by multiple news outlets, alleges that the trio worked as a team to carry out years of horrific abuse. And all three now face the possibility of the death penalty if they're convicted. They've all entered not guilty pleas. Now, these charges paint a very troubling picture of Arabella's final years. Prosecutors allege the family punished Arabella for seemingly innocuous things like the way she ate cereal, deprived her and two other children in the home of food and water, struck the children with a belt or paddle, prevented Arabella from using the bathroom, and forced her to exercise while wearing wet clothes and plastic bags. That alleged abuse, officials say, began back in February of 2019 and continued up until the day she died. All three defendants were indicted by a grand jury. They're charged with murder, conspiracy to commit child torture, child abuse, torture. Leticia's husband, Brian McCormack, who was a Border Patrol agent, would have faced charges as well, but he apparently took his own life in front of police near the family's home just hours after Arabella's death. And this grand jury indictment came after the trio's arrest back in 2022. When they stood before a judge that November asking for bail, the prosecutor laid out the details of Arabella's alleged abuse. And I'll give you a fair warning right now, it's difficult to hear.
When they arrived, they found the 11-year-old Arabella lying on the living room floor. She was pale, unresponsive, and had no pulse. At the time of her death, Arabella visibly was already severely emaciated. Her bones protruded from her skin. She had visible bruising, lacerations to her body. After further investigation, it was learned she had 15 healing bone fractures to her body.
Now, it turns out Leticia McCormack was actually a former leader at the Rock Church in San Diego. That's a mega church that was apparently founded by NFL player Miles McPherson.
The daughter Arabella, who had her life taken, had two sisters, and there's a lot of pain. I know some of you know her, Leticia McCormack, and we want to pray for everybody involved, all the people who knew her, our church. I know when things happen like this, there's a lot of questions about how it could happen and why it would happen, and we have the same questions, and so we got to go to the Lord for comfort in that situation.
Her leadership profile has since been removed from the church's website, and the church told NBC San Diego in 2022 that it had severed ties with her. And CBS News reports that while Leticia was never a pastor at Rock Church, she was, quote, ordained as an elder, which was a volunteer position with, quote, limited scope. The church told CBS that her ordination was previously suspended and the decision was made to revoke it. By the way, we were able to find Leticia McCormack on TruthFinder, the powerful background checker that we use. Now, TruthFinder didn't reveal any criminal history for her, but we were able to find locations that she lived, as well as information about her family members like Stanley and Adella Tom. And Law&Crime, we partner with TruthFinder. We use it to get details on people involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. After all, it's one of the largest public record search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. So right now, if you're interested, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. And according to CBS 8, while Brian McCormack was working with Border Patrol, Leticia was working with the San Diego Police Department as a crisis interventionist. Stanley and Adella Tom, they had also both reportedly worked with the San Diego Police Department as volunteers since 2015, according to NBC7. The San Diego Police Department confirmed to the outlet that the grandparents served as volunteers, but didn't offer a statement. Now, during a court hearing in 2022, prosecutors revealed that Adella Tom, Arabella's adoptive grandmother, was the, quote, rule enforcer on behalf of her daughter. And the prosecution says Adella was sick during the last few weeks of Arabella's life and wasn't present for some of the final abuse that Arabella allegedly endured. Arabella's biological mother, Toriana Flory, has spoken out, expressing her grief, her anger over what happened. She told local affiliate CBS 8 they should never, ever be allowed out of those bars, out of custody. If I could, I would have them in a 2x2 cell for the rest of their lives, a cage like they put my baby in. They appeared in court on Monday for a status conference where Deputy District Attorney Meredith Pro said that she could seek the death penalty because the DA's office believes the murder was committed during a torturous event, but no official decision has been made as of yet. There is another twist to this case that we want to talk about because according to court documents, the McCormacks were investigated for abuse before. Not once, but twice. There was reportedly a history of red flags here, as social workers investigated multiple reports of suspected child abuse dating back to 2018. Internal documents from the San Diego County's Child Welfare Services shows that school employees at Highlands Elementary School raised concerns about Arabella's treatment by her adoptive parents, Brian and Leticia. According to that first filing, which was from September of 2018, teachers reported some very disturbing things. They claimed the McCormacks were restricting Arabella's food and water intake for just 1 Dixie cup per day. Now, we don't know the exact dimensions of this cup, but if it was a Dixie bath cup, those are what, only 3 ounces? Also, according to this report, her parents limited her bathroom use to twice per day at school, barred her from using scissors or markers, and prevented her from earning classroom rewards like being a line leader. They also allegedly required daily behavior reports from her teachers. One school employee described the parents' behavior as, quote, being all about control. And this detail, in particular, this one is so heartbreaking. It is reported that Arabella herself told a school employee that her stomach was hurting one day. Quote, the child then asked the employee, do you know the movie Annie? The employee stated yes. The child responded that she was not like Annie because when Annie was adopted, all her hurts were gone. However, she stated that she is still hurting. Now, Arabella didn't elaborate on what she meant when she said that she was hurting, but what's really strange about this case is that despite the allegations from the teachers, despite the statement from the child herself, when the investigating social worker spoke with the child and the child's parents, they all denied what was happening. So how could a heartbreaking statement from a child not trigger immediate intervention from a school official? So how is this possible? Why were the allegations deemed unfounded, right? Well, according to the filing, this is what Arabella had to say when the social worker spoke to her. Quote, the child denied that she is ever not allowed to have dinner or if she's hungry and does not get enough food to eat. The child denied being physically disciplined. The child denied that anyone in the home fights or argues. PSW Freeman asked the child, is there anything that she is sad about? And the child said she gets mad if a friend is mean. The child did not report that anyone is being mean to her. PSW Freeman asked the child if she gets sad at home, and the child said no. PSW Freeman asked the child if she ever has to go potty and is not allowed to use the bathroom, and the child said no. Both Leticia and Brian, they also denied the allegations. Leticia reportedly told the worker that the school was informed of Arabella's stomach issues and that she was on a dietary plan to address what was going on. She also stated that Arabella had behavioral issues, which meant no scissors or playing with sharp objects, so an explanation for all this. And the father called the allegations bogus, and in a similar fashion stated that they were checking in with the teachers to make sure Arabella was doing okay. So with all that being said, the investigating officer determined that claims of emotional abuse against Arabella were unfounded, closed the case. A little bit of an aside here, we believe that the officer was investigating emotional abuse under Penal Code 11165.3, the statute in California that defines emotional abuse as a situation in which any person willfully causes or permits any child to suffer or inflicts thereon unjustifiable physical pain or mental suffering, or having the care of custody of any child, willfully causes or permits the person or health of the child to be placed in a situation in which his or her person or health is endangered. And apparently, based on the interviews with Arabella and her adoptive parents, nothing was uncovered that met this standard. Now here's the thing, less than a month after that investigation was closed, a second report came in, again from school employees. And this time the allegations were far more physical. And that report, dated November of 2018, it's only 3 months after the first report, witnesses describe an incident where Brian McCormack allegedly pinned down Arabella in an after-school program referred to as ESS, or Extended Student Services, searching her pockets while she was apparently screaming. According to that report, quote, on November 1st, 2018, Arabella disclosed her foster parents did not allow her to have candy and kept her from school on Halloween. The next day, she went to ESS. The child had candy. Brian arrived and found out she had candy. He aggressively picked the child off the ground and put her down on her side. The child was crying, screaming, and kicking. He pinned her down and tried to get into her pockets. This happened for 2 to 3 minutes. He was asked to leave by a third party because the other children were present. And apparently, when asked to leave, Brian allegedly dragged Arabella to his car, and she reportedly told school workers that her parents stripped her pants off and poured cold water over her head as punishment. And once again, a social worker investigated, interviewed Arabella in her home, but it ended up leading nowhere. And this is what Arabella apparently told the social worker, according to the report, quote, the child stated that she went to ESS and she was sharing her candy with her friends, and a kid went and told the teacher that she had candy. The child stated that the teacher asked her and she lied because she did not want to get in trouble. The child stated that when her dad arrived to pick her up, the teacher told the dad what happened, and she walked away, and her dad told her to come back and empty her pockets. The child said the father picked her up under her arms, and she said that she was upset and he was yelling. The child denied that she felt afraid of the adoptive father. The child denied that she has been physically abused. The child stated that she gets a lot of food to eat. The child stated that she never goes to bed hungry and has never said that she is not given food. The child stated that she feels safe in the home. So, in a similar fashion to the first time around, this caseworker apparently closed this case as well as unfounded. But in an interesting move, the McCormacks actually pulled Arabella out of public school to homeschool her following this alleged incident. And it's a decision that at this time did not seem to raise any alarm bells. Now, a lawsuit was filed on behalf of Arabella's two sisters, identified as EM and AM, who were just 6 and 7 at the time of their older sister's death. And the lawsuit names not only Leticia McCormack and her parents, but also multiple agencies, including San Diego Child Welfare Services, the School Pacific Coast Academy, and San Diego Rock Church. Specific individuals that worked at those agencies and allegedly had interaction with the children were also listed as defendants. And according to the suit, the younger children weren't in any better shape when police found them. AM and EM were also severely malnourished, neglected, and abused. Doctors described them as near death. Their bones could be seen through their skin. They had no fat on their bodies. AM's hands and feet were bright red and badly swollen. They both appeared younger than their ages due to underdevelopment. They suffered from refeeding syndrome. So this is a phenomenon identified following World War II, when prisoners of war were provided with food after a prolonged period of starvation and subsequently died from cardiac failure and had to be nourished gradually. They were hospitalized and received treatment that saved their lives. And as for Leticia and her parents, they are due back in court on April 16th. Now, I had the opportunity to speak to John Phillips about this. He's a victims' rights lawyer, and get his take on all the different facets of this story. All right, John, thanks so much for taking the time. It's good to see you. Your overall thoughts on this case and the idea that you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of alleged acts of abuse? What do you take away?
It's awful. I think they saw 700 different acts of abuse. Prosecutors and police tend not to use the word torture very loosely. And here it's literally a cause of action. I have a 13, 10, and 7-year-old, and this little girl was, I think, 48 pounds at age 11, and that screams malnutrition. It screams abuse, and it's just an awful set of facts.
How do you defend it?
Yeah, that's a good question. You also have the added issue that the dad, so to speak, killed himself when police started poking around. I don't think it's defensible.
Well, let me ask you just, do you think that'll come into evidence? Should that be used into evidence, or is that going to be overly prejudicial? I know, I understand the argument, right? You would introduce that to say he was consciousness of guilt. He knew what he did. He knew what he was a part of, right? But I feel like that would be overly prejudicial to put
I think it would be. It kind of depends on how they allege and how they play the conspiracy angle, because he could be a co-conspirator, and there could be ways to, whether you get it in or show that he's dead. That might not raise to the fact that he's committed suicide probably will be well over the line. But it's almost one of those cases that begs for some level of mental health crisis or other issue. But you had so many different, people from my count that were kind of co-contributors to the abuse and neglect.
Do you think this is going to be a death penalty case? You think we're talking capital punishment?
I think when it comes to abuse of children, that needs to happen. I am not a death penalty guy. You look at the stats of the price of it, and the fact that if we execute one person who was wrongfully convicted, the state shouldn't have done that. And why is the state in the death penalty business? But when it's harm to a child in this fashion, I think even the non-death penalty people are like, okay, let's send a message with this one. And this is so extreme.
One of the worst aspects of this case, and I went into detail about it before, was that there were warning signs. There were multiple interviews in the past. And the question becomes, how come nothing happened? And one of the concerns would be is that Arabella was telling these individuals that everything was okay. But when you think about the reliability of those interviews with children, particularly in that environment, in allegedly abusive environments, I mean, for example, one of the social workers interviewed Arabella, my understanding, at home with her adoptive parents nearby. That seems like a big problem.
It does. And most of what I do is civil litigation. And that was the big red flag for me, is look at all the potential defendants from the standpoint of a civil suit. You're not going to charge, some of these state agents in a criminal charge, but justice is spelled one way. It's defined many different ways. And certainly families want justice to improve. They want warning signs to be paid attention to. And they just weren't here. Robust civil litigation certainly is something that could occur.
Well, let me ask you this, because there is that separate lawsuit that's happening, but I wanted to ask you about this. The idea that the parents denied the allegations and said there was explanations for her dietary restrictions, her behavioral issues. They at one point took her out of public school, homeschooled her. Again, is there not an obligation to verify all this or to take a second look?
I think there is. And we're not talking, like I read about a case last week and commented on a case about the mother that just left her kids to be, they were pretty much abandoned to raise themselves. And she'd just give them food as needed. But this is not that. This is a fairly prominent, intelligent family that I think was in a leadership position in their church. And you have an obligation to put that aside and say, wait, this is wrong. There's issues here. But, I've also, my partner does family law, and I've also been on the other side where there was, false reports, or DCF kind of took it too far. And so but when you're dealing with the health and welfare of children, particularly in adopted capacity, you've got to pay attention to the warning signs.
Really, really upsetting case from a lot of different angles. We'll keep an eye on it, see where it goes.
It really is, and it's a good one to cover. And again, I'm going to echo what y'all have said in the past, is the 1-800-4A-CHILD number. We've got to, if we see something like this, we've got to say something, whether it's your neighbor or somebody that goes to your church or whatever. Like, we've got to take care of our kids.
It's a really good point. I appreciate you mentioning that, John. Yeah, see something, say something. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Good seeing you, John Phillips.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. And as always, come check us out and please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.